you couldn't course correct, right? And when you understand the levers that need to be pulled on, look, our margin's slipping. Well, we understand that you can reduce your COGS, you can increase your price, you can do better product mix. I mean, there's things that you can do in every category of the business if you've got the information and if you know where your destination is. You can make course corrections along the way, and the team will sort of play along. You got to be able to get that data, and you got to be really clear on what the levers are, sort of along the way. And some of those are hard decisions. When you have operating expenses in most businesses like ours, 70-75% of the OpEx is FTE. They're humans, right? And if it was a game of chess, I'd have won already. But these are people. These are not, right? So you've got to consider that. Okay, it sounds easy. We need to reduce OpEx by 20%. Those guys will work. Well, now you have this thing called culture and ethos that you completely just blasted, and now everybody's looking over their shoulder, and so it's much more complex than people think from the outside.
All right, welcome to Business Breakthroughs. Today I get to meet with Anthony Romano. He's the CEO of CREtelligent, a prop tech company focused on streamlining the due diligence process for commercial real estate. They've created a unique technology-enabled services platform called Radius that's used by lenders and brokers, commercial property owners, insurance companies, law firms, just to name a few. Anthony and I have been extremely close friends for nearly 35 years. We've been colleagues and business partners 4 times throughout our career. And I was dead set on having Anthony join us today because he's one of the best I know when it comes to harnessing the power of mindset in business and outside of work. He's a charismatic and dynamic leader who inspires others by leading from the front. And it's a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah, thank you. Thanks for the warm intro, and congratulations on the podcast, man. It's super cool.
Thank you. Yeah. Before we jump into some of my questions, I thought maybe you could give us a little bit more context on CREtelligent and your journey to selecting this business as one to lead.
Yeah, well, maybe start with the journey. I've spent 20 years or so in what I'd call the kind of real estate ecosystem, real estate finance, heavy on the residential and capital market side, with a company called CRElogic that ultimately went public in 2010. I was the chief revenue officer at First American, who most people would think of as a large title insurance company, but lots of stuff underneath the hood and various businesses. And so had really good experience there and got very intrigued with commercial real estate and the notion of deal feasibility and location logic and site selection and all of the diligence that goes on in a transaction, and then the monitoring of assets, sort of post-transaction. So I started, the predecessor of this business was called CRElogic. We rebranded the company to CREtelligent a couple of years after I took the CEO role. And it's focused on really trying to help those clients that you mentioned, whether it's brokers or banks or REITs or law firms or owner-operators, collapse the cycle time of identifying properties, of getting a transaction done, and then managing risk and arbitraging opportunity from a management of those assets.
Yeah. Not really an underserved market, but not one that has a single source to go to get all that stuff done, right?
Yeah, great way of saying that. There's a lot of kind of single-threaded monoline providers out there, and a company that does this with a large footprint, meaning if you're in multiple states or nationwide, having a provider that does sort of end-to-end due diligence with a platform. Radius is a order management and workflow platform. It's the utility and value the clients get is bananas, and I think that's been the most validating part, particularly the last couple of years, is to see the impact CREtelligent, our solution suite, is having on the client.
That's awesome. Well, and listen, I've always admired your passion, focus, and determination when it comes to business. And how much of that is just your natural curiosity and interest versus like your purposeful intention for establishing and maintaining a winning mindset?
Oh, that's such a good question. I think I've been super fortunate to work with some amazing people along the way. And you use the term mentor, but whether it was early at IBM and at a big software company called International Business Systems, worked with some really amazing people and got to understand the framework and template of business and how it can be really, really successful. And then I've got to see how decisions and external and internal things can have a business be in the ditch. And so yeah, I mean, everybody talks about, experience. It's after this many years and getting to watch the landscape. You get hardened up, and you understand. I understand a lot of the elements that it takes to be successful in a company at this stage in a journey. This is relatively early stage, business. And so, yeah, it's, I would tell you, if it's going to be harder than you think, and it's going to take longer than you think. That's my experience thus far. And so, yeah, you got to develop some real emotional endurance. There's no doubt. I think it was Anderson Horowitz, or maybe it was Mark Andreessen, who said, in this role, you experience two emotions: it's euphoria or terror. And that's so true. I mean, literally, it's either, oh gosh, this is unbelievable, or oh my God, the sky's falling. And so you got to be able to check yourself as the leader and be able to manage that, because that comes through to your clients, to your prospects, certainly to your, employee base, all the constituents in the puzzle. And so, yeah, it just, that positive, strong convictions, loosely held. You got to be really clear. But in our industry, particularly in the last 12, 18 months, there are things outside of our control massively, right? You watch Jerome Powell go straight vertical with Fed funds from 0 to 525. It cratered transactions in commercial real estate 50, 60%. Those are things you don't plan. You can have a crystal ball and you can set things up, but man, those external things impact business massively. And so you got to figure out how you have the right fortitude and build the right mindset, and that mindset has to permeate in the team, not just you, because you can't do it alone. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure. I think that euphoria and terror resonates with me, and sometimes it can be really rapid cycling. I mean, you could be on top of it one day, and then the next day just feeling like you're getting crushed. So,
Yeah.
yeah, totally, totally can relate to that. Um, yeah, but I think what's interesting, at least as I've observed you. I mean, you tend to remain pretty balanced and stayed in your tenor, and that's difficult to do. I mean, you're rarely flappable, uh, and uh, and so I don't know. I'm not sure what it is you bring to it every day, and if that's a mantra, or if that's just natural for you. But yeah, you have a unique gift in that.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I think the part of it, is to me, when you think about, all right, you want this outcome, and it always becomes, what are you optimizing for? In any business, there's some small, cool lifestyle businesses that you're optimizing for an income and taking care of a few employees and serving a few customers, and that's beautiful. In a business like ours that has now north of $20 million of other people's money, what you're optimizing for is a little different. And so, the pressure sort of, gets ratcheted up, the intensity gets ratcheted up a little bit. And I think, when I step back and I think about, all right, how does this all come to be? How does it manifest? And if you just looked in the mirror, you'd say clear intention, elevated emotion, right? And you get everybody wrapped around that. And then you also have to get people to detach a bit from the outcome, right? Because you can have so much of yourself. It is so consuming in building a business like this, that you can get lost, and everything else, then your sleep, your nutrition, your exercise, your mindfulness practice, all those things go to the wayside, and you wind up
Yeah,
having martinis late at night, taking Tagamet because you got a hole in your stomach. And so,
absolutely.
having gone through those cycles myself, I mean, there's enough self-awareness to say, this is it's a marathon, not a sprint. For me, I thought it was going to be a marathon. It's now becoming a cross country, 3,000 mile
It's an
run.
ultra.
Oh my
Yeah,
gosh, yeah, it's Rich Roll on steroids. So you've got to know that that's real, and businesses, you don't launch a business and go from launch to exit without a bunch of bad shit happening, and things, that internal things, external things, those are all real. And so you got to be able to have self mastery, and you got to know that, yep, it could be 60, 70 hours of work, but there's 168 hours in a week, and you got to figure out how to use those other hours to ensure that you are on it and productive,
Yeah.
and can lean into what you're doing, and know when you need a break, know when you need to, sort of check out a little bit. Yeah, and I've learned that just through trial and error because I wasn't great at it.
I remember earlier days when you weren't as great at it, but one of the things I think, I mean, you hit on it right there is, they have these ups and downs, and it becomes, it goes from maybe a 5K to a marathon to an ultra, and there's those points when you just have the realization, or something happens in the business, or the market corrects, or whatever it is, and all of a sudden you have to recalibrate, right? And so, um, again, what I noticed just about you is your ability to recalibrate pretty damn quickly. Like you adjust, reframe, oftentimes then come in and reframe the team, and do that pretty elegantly.
Thank you. Thanks. No, it's long, and there's so many elements of a successful business. And at the end of the day, growing up in sales and marketing, um, understanding really the financials of a business, and having raised a bunch of capital, it's really interesting. You have venture and private equity guys that grew up in business. They were entrepreneurs. They built world class businesses. They understand the seat you sit in. And then you get on a call with a private equity guy with a kid that looks like he's 12, and he's got a spreadsheet in front of him, and he's asking you about your margin here and this piece of the middle of the P&L and why is operating profit here. And that's really how people look at businesses. At the end of the day, those are what create the financials. There's qualitative and quantitative. The financials are it. Yes, you can have a lot of customers. Yes, you can have a cool tech platform. Yes, you can have a great net promoter score. Yes, you can have a good CSAT score. But at the end of the day, you know, revenue growth, margin expansion, managing your operating expenses, and then having, positive EBITDA and cash flow. That's what a business is about. And ultimately, if your business is going to exit in any form or fashion, those are the things you got to be concerned about. And so keeping those are a constant. And as all the environment changes, you got to reframe everybody to say, we got to focus on these things. We got to continue to focus on these things.
That's great. Yeah, I totally agree. Easier said than done, especially when there's, your emotions and your livelihood attached to it and everything else. But yeah, I think you're spot on. You alluded to, I mean, just kind of keeping yourself in balance, and how you utilize all of your time, not just your work time. And I know you're a very big believer in taking care of yourself so that you can then show up as the best version of yourself as a leader. Um, and I've seen a lot of these, evolution and change in your life as it relates to this. But I'm curious, what's your daily and weekly routine like these days?
Yeah, I'm a early riser, but everybody says, "Oh, you get up so early." It's because I go to bed at 9:30 or 10 o'clock at
Just
night.
for context, though, folks. I mean, we're talking like 3:30 in the morning.
I'm usually up at 4. I'll do a bunch of apple cider vinegar with some cayenne and a little bit of sea salt. Do some coffee with some MCT powder in it. Do probably a little reading, and then I'll look at my schedule for the day. Usually at the gym at 4:30 or 4:45. That for me is a great way to start the day. Getting a workout in. Probably 80% of the workout is weight and resistance training versus just cardio.
Just let me pull you back just a second, because I was curious. I mean, when you say, after MCT and coffee, like you're getting into reading, is that pleasure reading? Is that business reading? Is that you catching up on emails? What is that?
It's probably a little bit of both. Probably a little bit of both. I'm reading Masters of Scale right now by Reid Hoffman,
Oh yeah,
and
great.
probably rereading it. So I can kind of, when you think about balance, I love what I do, and I can't hide it from myself. I love business. I really do. I like the markets. I like the economy. Wendy and I, my wife, we went to Borders to pick out a book on, and we've been married for 31 years, last week together for 4 years. We were picking up a book on, couples. And so she went and looked for her book, and I went and looked for my book, and she came and found a cool book about, relationships. And I brought Ben Bernanke's book on monetary policy. And so she's like, whatever, dude. But I love it. And so I can mix that in. I can, read. I enjoy reading about other businesses. I love, post workout, I'll go sit in a dry sauna for 20 minutes and I'll listen to business podcasts. Listen, when you think about like a great athlete, a quarterback, or, go read a book on Kobe Bryant or Jordan, they were watching game films,
Yeah.
right? And you want to be great at what you do, go watch game films. And in the world of business, go read about everybody who's been there and done that, what their philosophy was, what worked and what didn't. And I think what you get from that mostly, at least what I get, it's not just the nuggets on go-to-market strategy or financial management or acquisitions. There's all that cool stuff. It's all the trials that they got through.
Right.
I just listened to Jordan's, it's Founders podcast. Founders and Invest Like the Best are by far the two best business podcasts I've ever listened to. But Jordan, you think about, all right, he won, three championships. He took time off to play baseball. He came back and won three championships. Obviously, the GOAT as it relates to hoops, but it took him 7 years to win his first championship.
Right.
Everybody don't want to talk about that, right? And you listen to how hard it was for those first 7 years, and I think that gives you this sense of, oh, okay, it's not just me. It's not just taking me longer. It's not just harder for me. This is the reality. This is, we want to be really massively successful, and you got to go through it.
I think that's, yeah, great insight. So often people just look at the outcome and the success and don't look at all of the inputs, don't look at the hours, the early hours in the gym and that hours late shooting free throws when everybody else has gone home, right? That's the stuff that is different.
It's private victory precedes public victory. What you do in the dark help you shine in the light. And if you're not willing to do that, I mean, it is hard. This running a company and building a team and growing a business in this world, particularly in a venture private equity funding company, it's for real. Like,
Yeah.
and you and I even used to joke it. One of my favorite movies is Alex Honnold's, Free Solo.
Yeah.
And that's how I feel all the time. You're 2,800 feet up, El Cap with no
Full
ropes,
commitment. Yep.
You're
Yeah.
like, yeah, you're in, and there's no option, right? So there is no plan B. There is no safety net. You're getting to the top, and so with that mindset and that level of clarity, you just not got to know there's going to be stuff that's going to be challenging along the way, and that's okay.
So good.
Uh,
So I'm sorry, I interrupted you. So you go to the gym, you're doing primarily weight resistance training. Is that the deal?
Yeah, I think it's funny. I also on the podcast, I'll listen to Huberman and listen to Peter Attia and listen to, Rich Roll, and it's more health and wellness and functional medicine and integrated health. And I got really into that, 5, 6 years ago. Changed my diet. Growing up a wop from Brooklyn, eating, bread and pasta and crackers, and went to a pretty strict ketogenic diet. I don't really do quite that anymore, but it really changed body composition, and then realized that, and I ran a lot of marathons and did a lot of long bike rides and triathlons and stuff. Resistance training, when you think about the number one predictor of longevity, it's lean muscle mass, and you don't get that doing the elliptical or going for a jog. And I'm fortunate, and like you, grew up playing sports, and so to go and bang a bunch of weights, I love it. It's really cool. It's also incredibly healthy for you, relative to some of the other things that you can do. So, and I'm talking 40-minute workouts. I don't go spend hours in the gym, but do a 40-minute workout, hit a sauna, do a contrast therapy in a really cold shower, and then you're at your desk at 6:15.
Absolutely. How many days a week are you doing that?
Probably 4 days during the week, and then one day on the weekend, and then all cross train. Go for a long bike
Sure.
ride on the weekend or do something different. But yeah, I love it. Actually, it's my time, but I can mix that in with a little early morning business reading, some business podcasts in the sauna, and it's super cool.
No, that's great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've finally gotten to the point where I now schedule those time blocks every morning, even though is before the work calendar. But yeah, every morning it's just on the calendar, and I know I have to go do it. Usually, I'm wanting to do it, but even
Yeah.
if not, when I have something calendared, I stick to it. So
No doubt, no doubt.
yeah,
I would tell you that the marathons and the triathlons and the centuries, the endurance stuff helped me here, and I recognize I'm more of an endurance athlete, not the fastest, not the strongest, but I can suffer as good as most people. So it really translates into this kind of a role because it's tough. It's super challenging, and it's not over next week or next month. I mean, there's a horizon, and you know, sort of stick to it.
I like that, and we have so many friends that do that, where they've constantly got like a next event. You know, they're constantly have something on the horizon that they're working towards, uh, yeah, I think there's a lot in that, right? That keeps you accountable and keeps you motivated.
Absolutely, absolutely.
So, switching back, one of the other things that I wanted to talk about, this is kind of an area that I've consistently been impressed with you on, is your ability to focus your energy and attention on just the few things that matter most. Um, and I guess the item that I'm most curious about in that is not so much, your ability to focus, but is how do you so quickly determine what the most important thing is? I mean, I've seen them when we've had setbacks, whether it be market corrections or opportunity or otherwise. Almost in an overnight cycle, you'll come back with a plan, document it out, deliver it to the team. You seem to have just a unique ability to very quickly surmise what's most important and how to focus on it.
Well, thank you. I think it changes all the time, but if you wanted to really keep it simple in a business like ours and where we are in this journey, really since I took this role, we always say the main thing is to keep the main thing the main thing. Liquidity. You can't run out of cash. And in a business, everybody thinks about, oh, you don't have operating profit. Well, like, go look at the best businesses for their first 3, 5, 7 years, the big ones that created massive scale and have incredible valuations. When you're investing in your tech stack and you're investing in your go-to-market and you're investing in all your business process, you're doing that ahead of revenue margin and EBITDA. You are. And so you got to be really careful. You got a certain amount of cash. You know that you could potentially raise additional dollars, and it's in a Series Seed or a Series A, you can have a business plan, a really cool management team, and a pro forma, which is really always an amateur forma, never pro forma because it's all bullshit. It's here's what we're going to go do, and you can get some funding. When you get a year and 2 and 3 years in, it's now I've got history to look back and did what you tell me come to fruition or not, and how far off were you? And now it's about metrics and KPIs and performance, right? The numbers don't lie. You get into your Series B, and it's about revenue growth, margin expansion, EBITDA, customer acquisition, go down the list. Not running out of cash is number one. And so I've kept people focused on that. And we had to pivot hard in the end of 22 and in 23. I mean, we reduced our OpEx by 45%. That's almost taking half the company out, right? Because you had to. And there were no other alternatives, right? You've got a runway of cash, and you see where now revenue and margin is, and your margin covers your operating expense. And when your operating expenses are 800,000 and your margin is 4, right? You just lost $400,000 in EBITDA. Forget the below the line interest and all the other things. So that has been, sort of the main thing for a long time for us. The other piece of it is in businesses like this, I would tell you, cool innovation, great product is secondary to sales and distribution. I've just watched so many companies with amazing technology, amazing product, and they were horrible at go to market. And revenue and sales can cure a lot of problems. Can really cure a lot of problems. So for us, that's where we're continue to be focused. I look at my role right now as the CEO. It's setting strategy and vision and pace and raising capital. It's heavy in our go to market. And in fact, I'm more involved in lead generation and demand generation, omni-channel demand generation, than I am in anything else in the business. That's how you grow. And you can, if you show, month over month and quarter over quarter, new client acquisition, wallet share expansion, revenue growth, potential investors will look at that and go, wow, if the market's big enough and you've nailed that and you understand sales cycle duration and close ratio and CAC and LTV, you get that. Look, we can help you tune the dials on margin and OpEx and all the other happy horse shit that goes with it. That's the name of the game, right? If you're a massively profitable business, but you can't grow top line, sort of becomes problematic. So that's the main thing for us right now at CREtelligent. Just bring it back to present day. It's continued to grow, and I think we added 75 new clients in Q1. In 13 different verticals, the different sectors. So that is an adoption and an entanglement thing that says, okay, there's validity. People in early stage always talk about product market fit. To me, product market fit also includes price. And price isn't just dollar, price is a measure of value. So a client's got an unmet need, you got a solution. The question is, what are they willing to pay and what benefits and value do they get? When you nail that, oh man, a lot of things become sort of
Right.
easier.
Yeah. Get a little bit of momentum rolling at that point.
Yeah.
Yeah, easier said than done. I mean, it even certainly cash is king, and making sure that you don't run out of money is vital. Um, Yet every day, then shit comes up, right? The customer's unhappy, or things break, or whatever it might be. It's very difficult not to get drawn in, and I think that's, again, not to overly pat your back on this, but I mean, I think you're able to um, distribute that workload, or those concerns, and make sure that you continue to stay focused on those items that you've determined to be most important.
Yeah. And a
Yeah.
big part of that is having the right team.
Yeah.
Having, people talk about, is it the journey or the destination? It's neither. It's the fucking people, man.
Yeah.
It's the people that you do it with. And if you've got people that are half in and half out, or they don't have the experience, or they don't have the grit, and they're not willing to go through some of the challenges, it becomes really hard as the CEO, because then delegating and pointing people toward things that might be a distraction for me, but that are critical to the business. If those things don't
Right.
get done, now stuff comes unraveled. So I've been super blessed with working with amazing people who see the vision, who see the end state, who get that there's going to be bumps along the way, but are committed to sort of getting there.
Yeah, and clearly you have an amazing team surrounding you. Um, but and still, though, as an A player through and through, which is what you are,
You know,
how do you manage your expectations for those that surround you, both immediately in your leadership team, and throughout the company? How do you? They're not all going to work at the same level that you do, and so how do you manage your expectations?
Yeah, I think recognize that. So that last statement is super important, because for a long time, that is what pissed me off. Dude, it's Saturday from 5 in the morning till 9. Why aren't you working? Right? Like, and just because I was, it didn't mean other people were. Other people have younger children, they have other things going on, and I had to kind of pull back and recalibrate, and to your point, reset my expectations on, what the business will take everything you've got, everything, all your time. And so you got to allow people to be balanced, and you got to allow people the other endeavors and things they've got going in their lives. But I think it comes back to, as a team, it's not just Anthony. This is a team setting our charter, right, and saying, okay, let's look at the next 12 months or the next 4 quarters, and these are the things we're trying to get accomplished, and then be able to honestly measure how are we doing and what course corrections do we need to make. I think for a long time, those how are we doing pull-ups were way too, the cadence was way too long. We'd look at it today and you'd look at it again in 3 months. Well, you couldn't course correct, right? And when you understand the levers that need to be pulled on, look, our margin's slipping. Well, we understand that you can reduce your cogs, you can increase your price, you can do better product mix. I mean, there's things that you can do in every category of the business if you've got the information and if you know where your destination is. You can make course corrections along the way, and the team will sort of play along. You got to be able to get that data, and you got to be really clear on what the levers are, sort of along the way. And some of those are hard decisions. When you have operating expenses in most businesses like ours, 70-75% of the OpEx is FTE. They're
Right.
humans,
Right.
right? And if it was a game of chess, I'd have won already. But these are people. These are not, right? So you've got to consider that. Okay, it sounds easy. We need to reduce OpEx by 20%. Those guys will work. Well, now you have this thing called culture and ethos that
Yeah.
you completely just blasted, and now
Absolutely.
everybody's looking over their shoulder, and so it's much more complex than people think from the outside.
Absolutely. That's great. Great comments. Yeah. Um, So you currently have a mixture of in-office employees and then also remote. Um, I mean, everything kind of got topsy turvy, obviously through COVID, but a lot of these, remote work situations are sticking now. How are you managing to keep the mix productive and on track and innovating and performing to your expectations?
It's a totally different environment. I would tell you, I was really fortunate when I was at CoreLogic. I managed a large team, and it was all over the country. And I actually went through a class called virtual leadership because you got to learn how to pull people together and get people to kind of sing from the same sheet of music and build relationships with culture. And you actually don't see them but twice a year. That's been going on, since the beginning of time. COVID in offices, we've got two primary locations and people all over the country, but in offices, it changed it. And even today, here we are, half of the company doesn't come in every day. They don't. And I was reluctant to do a mandate and an edict on saying butt and seat 5 days a week. That's not the world we live in. And it's not the old farts like me. It's the 20. They would prefer the flexibility of a hybrid environment. So I think if you can do the culture thing, if you can get people on the same page, if you can err on the side of over communicating, if everybody's clear on vision, strategy, alignment, and then how their 9 square feet of the world meets all that, and you can do that remote and then some in office, and then you can manage performance and productivity. Because if that wanes, then it's not working. Then I think a hybrid environment's okay. And we see people in the office, a couple of 3 days a week. You lose a lot. I think you lose a ton. My daughter moved from Sacramento into San Francisco, and the primary reason was she wanted to be in the office every day. She wanted to be, and when you're 25, 26 years old, you need whiteboard sessions and skull sessions and talking to people who've been there in different functional areas of the business. It's really hard to do that over Zoom and Teams full time from your apartment bedroom. And so I think it's a mix, and I don't think we've cracked the code on how to do it perfectly. But that's another thing. Super blessed with an amazing human capital HR leader here who really understands that programs and events and campaigns and things that matter to make it a great place to work are really important. And so guys like me often will miss that because it's drive, 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 drive. And then all of a sudden you see people leaving and you go, wow, what happened? Right. So,
Yeah. I think you hit on two key real points there. I mean, one is that clarity of vision, making sure everybody really understands very clearly what you're headed towards and how their, to use your phrase, 9 square feet of the world, ties to that. And then having the communication systems in place, and whether that's the tools you use or the cadence or combination of those, that seems to be really critical.
yeah.
As you talk about your daughter Olivia going to the city, I mean, it makes me think about our early days at IBM and what a special opportunity that was to learn in that company. They did so much training and so much access to everything. But you've now, of course, been at IBM and with First American. You've been a part of larger enterprise businesses, at least one mid market that I would think of, and then you've been now a ground up founder a couple of times. What are the key lessons that you took away from the big company experiences, whether that's IBM, IBS, or First American, that you now apply to startup land?
Yeah, I think in an enterprise, particularly when you're public, right? It was a big public company, so we had $1.5 billion business that spun out and went public, and you got 5,000 employees in multiple countries and 100 different solutions and divisions and business units, and part of it was made by acquisition. Um, the the public markets require growth. They require earnings. They require valuation increases. They require distributions, often in dividends and things. And in that environment, what I found and what I saw was, and I would go to, as one of the leaders, be back in Manhattan. It was Investor Day, and all the leaders wanted to talk about was revenue and EBITDA and free cash flow. And oh, by the way, we've got employees and customers. And what I
This afterthought. Yeah.
and what I learned, and I actually learned it from another fairly large company, was that it was like, hey, no, let's start with making this an amazing place to work. Let's invest in people. Let's give them development plans. Let's make sure they have the earnings. Let's make sure they have flexibility. Let's have employees fall in love with what they do, recognizing it's a job, but let's have them be great and passionate about it. And then as a result, that'll impact the client. They'll bend over backwards. They'll take a bullet for a customer. They'll call late at night. They'll come in early in the morning. And the customer will feel that and experience that. And then they'll spend money with us more than they otherwise would have. And then our revenue, EBITDA, and free cash flow in
Right,
that
it
order.
follows. Yeah.
So that was a really key learning for me, that it's not, it's the notion of money and numbers follow, they don't lead, right? That's not, if your strategy is we're going to get to this dollar amount and this EBITDA, that's not a strategy. That's the result of a
Right.
really good strategy. And
Right.
I think putting, your employees, your customers, your business partners first, then the financials, sort of follow.
Seems like the financials too. I mean, oftentimes the way I see it is just such a hollow vision or goal for average employee, right? And they're not really grounded in the profit percentage or those things. I mean, they really care about the why, and they care about, is the organization one that I want to be a part of, and um, yeah, that people first and mission first, right?
Couldn't agree more. And here we do this survey with our clients called a Net Promoter Score. We've done, I think, 4 or 5 of them now. I was super against it at the beginning, but got outvoted. Like, it was like, wait, we're way too early innings to get customer feedback in that regard. But it's what it's proved is not just the score itself, which for us has been unbelievable. So impressed with um, our ability to capture customers real how they really feel. And when you've got a really high NPS score, that says yes, you have great technology, yes, you have great data analytics, but it's you got great people that lean in and take care of a
Right.
customer. What's more impressive to me is, and we're just finishing one up now, is like 78% of the responses have comments and they have feedback. And the lion's share of it is really good. So we can
Yeah.
continue to invest in things that customers care about. The other is, oh, I wish, wouldn't it be great? You guys fell down here. And that drives our roadmap and our development. And so one of the things that I think where I say failed, but where I was behind the 8 ball is I made way too many assumptions. Look, I know this industry. I've been around. I get it. Here's what we're going to go do. And it was from my mouth, not the mouth of the client,
Yeah.
and not understanding each node in their process and where there was unmet needs and what they were willing to pay for and how they were going to implement it and what they were doing today versus what I was going to bring to them to be able to contrast it. And so we're much better at that than we used to be. Before we make an investment, before we start a requirements doc, certainly before we start dev, we're really leaning in and talking to the client and understanding their process and their perspective. And that was something that didn't happen overnight here. It was,
Such a common trapping, for especially for founders that come out of an industry that they know really well, right? They tend to see it all through their own lenses and make decisions, like you said, like kind of in that silo, or yeah, I found it to be so profound to actually engage customers, whether they be through an advisory board or through an NPS survey, or even through your direct interactions, whether that be sales or support. There's so much you can learn if you just ask the questions and demonstrate curiosity and listen.
yeah, yeah, with you.
Yeah.
And just trying to make improvements in that process for a client, and watching when I think about it, I get involved in much of our many of our sales cycles with some of our larger prospects. And what's really interesting is to contrast again what they do today to get done whatever it is we're going to show them how we do it, right?
Right.
And it's often sort of this notion of latent pain to pain,
Right.
where they're like, look, I've got this nailed, but I'm willing to listen to you. And then you have them walk you through what they do, and then you demonstrate the way we do it, and they go, oh my god, it takes me 4 hours to do it, you
Right.
just showed me how to do 2 minutes. They didn't even know it hurt because they do it, they get it done.
Right.
And I think that I learned that too. It's not all about just, when I think about technology, it comes from the word technique, which is just a better way of doing something. It's not all just tech. It's process. It's data. It's information. It's making a better decision. The ultimate outcome is making a better decision faster. And that's not just all coding all the time. And we had to learn that here. So
So you explained, I mean, a bit already about the goals and objectives for CREtelligent. Curious about you. I mean, you've been through a number of experiences, like in big company, large company, startups, and the whole thing, and also that you've accepted or embraced the fact that you're now in an ultra marathon, right? You're doing a cross country. So, what's the what's the reframing you've done around your own career? What are the goals for Anthony at this point?
Don't run out of money.
Step one,
Personally.
personally.
No, yeah, it's again when you think about an investor's time horizon. When somebody makes an investment in you, in your company, it's in you and your management team, and they want a return on that investment, right? And they're a fund, and they've got LPs who've given them money, and they want a return on their investment, and not just here's the dollars, and I sit on your board, but there's a time horizon, right, for that they have for each one of those, for those funds, and so we're at the point in our journey where that's part of the reality is how do we in a market that got literally cratered. Now we watched our top 10 clients go down in revenue by 50%. And when 90% of your business is tied to a transaction versus just a software subscription, we've got a hybrid model where we've got subscriptions and enterprise license, but it's heavily tied to transactions, and transactions drop 50%. You got to add a lot of clients. So we were fortunate. We added a lot of clients, revenue didn't come down. But now you got to figure out how do you start the descent, right? Because you got to land the plane eventually. And that doesn't have to be an exit. Oh, somebody buys your company. It can be recapitalization. It can be private equity putting a couple things together. I mean, there's lots of alternatives there. But you've got to be able to shift your mindset. It's not just growth, growth, growth. Okay, what's the plan to begin the descent and land the plane? And that's kind of where we are, at the moment. Is how do
Starting to
we
think
think
through
about
those. Yeah.
how do we think about the metrics and profile of the business that somebody's going to get really excited about? When I talk about again financials, but for us to say, okay, well, you're going to have 2,000 customers in 13 different verticals or sectors. You've got
Right.
a tech stack that's had $8 million invested that somebody got. You've got the customer feedback, all these other kind of intangibles that add to the valuation, of the business. And then you start working with advisors and investment banks on the buy and sell side guys, and you land it. Um,
How early do you think folks need to be thinking about that? I mean, I think you're absolutely right. I mean, you've got to have the systems in place. You especially as a small business, you got to make sure that you as the founder are not so integral to the operations that you become a liability to the business, right? And so how far ahead do you need to be thinking about that restructuring, whether it's exit or recapitalization?
Yeah, I mean, ideally, well, the investment bankers, and we've been fortunate. We've had a lot of them contact us who have been watching what we're doing in this prop tech, real estate tech space. They've got other the nice things. There's a lot of uninvested capital in big private equity firms and in big corporations that are very acquisitive that buy things. So we've had folks contact us, and through that process, you have these conversations about what that profile looks like, what they're considering, how they look at the metrics over a period of time, et cetera. Um, and so it's normally about six months is what these guys are like. Hey, when you think you're 6 months away from the event, then we want to engage. And many of them, it's a retainer, and there's a success fee and things of that nature. They normally don't take on a company unless they absolutely believe there's an outcome. And so we've been fortunate. I think we've 6 or 7 of these guys that we're under NDA with, but we're not there. We're not 6 months away. We want to run the play. We've made strategic investments in the go to market and in some of the product suite. I want to see that monetized and come to fruition. And I'd love to, and I can't control. I love being optimistic. I hate being optimistic about things I can't control, which is Jay Powell and can we do 25 or 50 basis point reduction? But there'll be a time when transactions go north. That's because rates are coming down and more deals pencil. It'd be great to time it with that because rising tide will lift all boats for CREtelligent. When you have that many clients, just one more creates kind of really interesting revenue and a profile. So
That's awesome. Yeah. And I see that happening for you. I mean, it sounds like even during this downturn, you've been focused on the blocking and tackling to keep things running and make sure you don't run out of cash. But at the same time, putting energy into innovation, into increasing the number of accounts you have, and all of these other things that you can control. And when then the market conditions turn favorable, uh, it's going to be boom time.
That's sort of the thinking for sure, for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So slip your coaching cap on for a moment for me, and what sort of recommendations would you provide my listeners around how they can level up their mindset game and maximize their opportunities for success in their business?
I think the first question is knowing what you're optimizing for. What is it? Is again, is it I want to create a small company because I want to run a business and I want to have earnings and live a cool life? Do I have an idea, and a business plan that where there's a big market? I think that's the number one predictor of success is the total available market large enough, right? You're going to go raise a bunch of money from people in a market that has a $10 million TAM, probably not that exciting, right?
Right.
So if you're optimizing for, I want to grow a world-class company and I want to go take money from investors, from, seed investors, angels and VCs and private equity and go create something, amazing. That's what you're optimizing for. And that's a process that takes time. If you really honestly believe you got an idea and there's cool innovation and you get people to rally, you got to be willing to invest 5 years of your life, in my opinion. And I've just watched it so many times where, oh my gosh, we're going to do this, we're raising this dough, and we're flipping this thing in a year or two. I'm sure it's happened. I don't have any experience there.
Nor do I. Nor do I. That's
Yeah,
great.
yeah. So yeah, and I think
So
understanding the other thing is the finance. A lot of people are the tech guy, the innovation guy, or the sales and marketing guy, and then that's awesome. But I think one of the greatest compliments I ever got was a private equity managing director who we sat down and went through our pro forma, and he just said, "Look, I've never heard a CEO go through the financials like that." That's the holy grail, man. Like, if you cannot if you can't go to the middle of the P&L and explain every single cell as the CEO, you got a problem. And you've got to understand what levers drive revenue, what levers drive margin profile, how you control your operating expenses. If you can't prove you can be operating profit positive, EBITDA positive, you're never going to get there. So you got to really have clarity on what that means. And each week and each month, as you're looking at financials, you're either moving in the right direction or the wrong direction, and then you've got to course correct. I think understanding, finance is a language of business. You got to get that.
I think that's gold right there. I've had similar comments, and it man, if you know your numbers, if you really understand the mechanics of the business and can articulate that, that provides so much comfort and confidence to an investor or purchaser, or even the team for that matter. But I think that's really good stuff right there.
Yeah.
So, Anthony, where can folks find you?
Well, I'm in my office right now. I don't know if you noticed that really cool picture I've got on the wall there. I think that
I
was
did
taken
notice
with your
that.
son. Yeah, I think that was Ethan's picture. Um, well, you can go out to CREtelligent. You certainly can catch me on LinkedIn. I'm not. I mean, full disclosure, not a big social media guy. I've stayed away from Facebook and stayed away from Twitter and Instagram very consciously. I think LinkedIn is a platform for business. I've learned a lot. I've met a lot of amazing people. Share a lot of content. And so, yeah, those are the two places folks can find me.
Excellent. Well, I'm sure after this conversation, a lot of people are going to be looking forward to your podcast or book. Um, Wealth of information and experience, and greatly appreciate you taking some time to meet with me today.
Yeah, Mark, thanks for having me on, and congratulations on all you're doing, man. Awesome.
Thanks, man.
Cheers.